My name is Samuel Lancaster, 37 years old, the eldest son of George Lancaster, the tycoon of Lancaster Construction, the father I once respected but now only feel pain and betrayal from. I had been missing for 3 months, declared dead, but today I will make them face their own ghost. I stood outside the courtroom door, my hand gripping tightly onto a thick file with the company's logo gleaming under the fluorescent lights. My heart pounded like the echo of shovels digging into the earth in my memories. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chilly air outside. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You can do this, Samuel," I muttered to myself. "For Mom, for the victims, and for yourself." For the past 3 months, I had lived like a ghost, hiding, investigating, gathering every piece of evidence to expose them. My father and Henry, my brother. They thought I had vanished forever, but today, I would return like a living nightmare. The heavy door creaked open under my push, the hinges squeaking like fate's whisper. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, residents affected by the company's projects, and familiar faces from the business world. The atmosphere was heavy, tense like a string about to snap. The judge was banging his gavel, preparing to deliver the civil verdict in the class action lawsuit against Lancaster Construction. My father's company was accused of substandard construction causing subsidence and damage to hundreds of households. But I knew better than anyone that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Financial fraud, bribery, and even attempted murder, all would be revealed today. I stepped in, each footfall steady but my heart in turmoil. The light from the large glass windows streamed in, blinding me after so many days in hiding. No one recognized me at first. I had changed. Unkempt beard, shorter hair, and eyes now sharper and colder than ever. But then a whisper arose from the front row. "Who's that?" The entire courtroom fell silent. Time seemed to stop. I felt every eye turning toward me like needles pricking my skin. Then suddenly the whispers exploded, bursting like waves crashing against rocks. "Oh my God, that's Samuel Lancaster. He's alive? The guy who went missing 3 months ago." The murmurs turned into chatter, then into chaotic noise. Reporters hurriedly pulled out cameras, flashes firing relentlessly, illuminating my face like an unwilling star. My throat felt dry, but not from fear, from the surging anger. They thought I was dead, and now my return was a shock no one expected. I looked straight at the defendant's bench where my father, George Lancaster, and my brother, Henry Lancaster, were sitting. My father, 62 years old, still in an expensive suit, his silver hair meticulously combed. But now he was stunned, mouth agape, eyes wide and unblinking. He stared at me as if seeing a demon rising from hell. His face paled, his hand gripping the armrest so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Beside him, Henry Lancaster, 34 years old, the vice president of finance, my brother, was no better. He trembled, lips pressed tight, eyes glued to me as if unable to believe what he was seeing. "Impossible." I read the whisper on his lips. They had planned perfectly to eliminate me, to silence me about the company's wrongdoings. But now that plan was crumbling right before their eyes. The judge paused mid-sentence, his wooden gavel hanging in the air. He pushed up his glasses, staring at me. "Who is this?" His voice trembled, breaking the silence. The lawyers for the plaintiffs and defendants stopped arguing, turning sharply toward me. The courtroom atmosphere was now more suffocating than ever, as if everyone was holding their breath waiting for a bomb to explode. I advanced forward, each step echoing on the polished wooden floor. The thick file in my hand felt heavy, containing not just papers but evidence of betrayal, of the long nights I gathered in the shadows. Everyone held their breath as I approached the bench. The murmurs faded, leaving only deadly silence. I placed the file on the judge's table, the rustling of papers sounding like a challenge. My eyes directed straight at my father and brother. I looked at them, and in that moment pain mixed with satisfaction. "What's wrong, Dad?" "Brother," I thought to myself. "Did you think I'd lie buried underground forever?" I took a deep breath, my voice ringing out clearly despite the storm in my heart. "Your Honor, I am Samuel Lancaster. I am not dead. And I have evidence to prove that this company, my family, tried to kill me to cover up their crimes. My words landed like a bomb, and the courtroom erupted again. But that was just the beginning. I would tell everything from start to finish so they could no longer escape. The judge banged the gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order in the chaotic courtroom. The noise gradually subsided, but the atmosphere remained tense like a string about to snap. I took a deep breath, my voice ringing out clearly in that deadly silence. Your Honor, before I present the evidence, allow me to recount what happened 3 months ago. That was the beginning of this nightmare. All eyes turned to me, and I began to reminisce, my words flowing like a turbulent river, pulling me back into the dark past. 3 months ago, on a late afternoon, the sky had turned a dull gray, signaling an impending rain. I was sitting in my office at the headquarters of Lancaster Construction Group in my role as technical director. Work was hectic, design drawings, project progress reports, and a pile of emails to handle. I was always the one trying to keep everything upright, even though my father and brother often mocked my principles. The office was spacious, with a glass wall overlooking the bustling city, but at that moment I felt exhausted. The argument with my father earlier still haunted me. About the major project with inflated budgets, about substandard materials threatening the safety of hundreds of people. "You're betraying the family, Sam," my father growled. Henry smirked, telling me I should take a leave for a while to let things settle. The phone rang loudly, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was Henry. I picked up, my voice calm. "Henry, what's up?" His voice came through the other end, hasty and full of anxiety, unlike his usual confident demeanor. "Sam, there's an emergency at the Northern City construction site. Part of the structure has subsided. The workers are panicking. Come right away. We need you to handle the technical issues urgently." My heart beat faster. The northern site was a big project involving an overpass construction, one of the company's lucrative contracts. I didn't suspect anything, as Henry rarely called in such an emergency. "All right, I'm on my way." "Stay calm, bro." I hung up, quickly gathering the construction plans, thick sheets with diagrams, calculations, and my notes. I thought to myself, need to resolve this quickly before the heavy rain. I rushed out of the office, quickly greeting the secretary and jumping into my old pickup truck. Not the fancy kind like my father or Henry used, but a practical one for field work. The city streets were crowded, horns blaring, but I focused on driving, my mind swirling with possibilities. Subsidence? Could it be due to poor materials? I wondered, recalling the times I opposed cost-cutting. Rain began to fall lightly, fogging the windshield. I turned on the wipers, accelerating toward the north. The distance wasn't far, but in my mind, time seemed to stretch endlessly. I called Henry back, but he didn't answer. Probably busy handling it, I thought, trying to shake off a vague unease. When I arrived, it was pitch black. The site was on the city's edge, bordering a dense forest, an isolated place with few people passing by in the evening. My truck's headlights swept across the area, but there were no workers in sight. Normally at this time, the site lights would be blazing, machinery roaring. But today there was only darkness and the patter of rain on the truck roof. My heart pounded harder. "Where's Henry? Where are the workers?" I turned off the engine, stepped out, carrying the plans and a small flashlight. The cold air seeped through my jacket, a faint smell of damp earth and machine oil lingering. "Henry! Where are you?" I called loudly, my voice echoing in the empty space. No response. Only the wind whistling through the trees and the rain growing heavier. I ventured deeper into the site, the flashlight sweeping over scattered materials, concrete, steel bars, and a few old trucks. Maybe they've evacuated, I reassured myself, but anxiety began to surge. I called Henry's name again, louder. "Henry! I'm here." Still silence. Suddenly a small sound from behind, like footsteps on wet ground. I spun around, but it was too late. A heavy blow like thunder struck the back of my head. Pain exploded, my vision blurred. I collapsed onto the muddy ground, the plans flying from my hand. "What?" I tried to whisper, but everything sank into darkness. Only the sound of wheels rolling nearby and the pungent smell of machine oil assaulting my nose. The smell of a truck, the smell of betrayal that I didn't recognize at the time. When I woke up, my head throbbed like it was being hammered. Everything was pitch black. I tried to move, but my hands and feet were bound tightly with rough rope, chafing against my skin painfully. My mouth was sealed with duct tape, forcing me to breathe through my nose. I was in a confined space, surrounded by hard wood, like a sealed wooden box, exactly like a coffin. My heart raced wildly, sweat pouring out. "Where is this? What's happening?" I thought, struggling but only causing more pain to my body. Sounds from outside echoed, nails being hammered thud by thud like driving nails into my heart. Then the shovel covering earth, layer after layer, falling onto the lid, heavy and relentless. The air grew thin. Each breath became labored, my chest tightening. I understood then. I was being buried alive. Terror surged like a devouring wave. "No, impossible! Henry, Dad, why?" Memories flooded. The urgent call, the deserted site, the sudden blow. It was a trap. They wanted to eliminate me, silence me about the wrongdoings. I struggled harder, my shoulder slamming against the side, but to no avail. The ropes tightened and the air grew thinner. Breath shortened in my chest. I felt dizzy, vision spinning even in the dark. "Mom, sorry." I thought of my mother, Angela, the kind woman who always believed in me. How heartbroken she would be if I died like this. The shoveling continued, the earth thickening, sounds fading. I tried to scream, but only muffled grunts escaped through the tape. Tears rolled down my cheeks, mixing with sweat. Why? Why me? The air was now just shallow gasps, my chest aching. I was nearing exhaustion, darkness gradually swallowing any hope of survival. In the courtroom, as I recounted to this point, my voice faltered due to the overwhelmingly painful memories. Everyone fell silent, with only the sound of labored breathing. My father bowed his head deeply, his shoulders trembling as if about to collapse. Henry stared blankly at the floor, his face pale. The judge leaned forward, his voice urgent. "Continue, Mr. Lancaster." What happened next? I took a deep breath, quickly wiping the sweat from my forehead, and went on. That wasn't the end. In that darkness, I thought I would die. But then, a miracle happened. I remember that moment clearly in the narrow wooden box, the air stifling like an invisible hand squeezing my throat. I struggled desperately, trying to loosen the ropes by rubbing my wrists against the rough wooden sides. Each movement was agonizing, my skin tearing, warm blood oozing out, but I didn't stop. I have to get out. I have to live, I thought to myself, gritting my teeth until my jaw ached. But the more I moved, the thinner the air became. The atmosphere was now as fragile as a thread, each inhale a battle. My heart raced wildly as if about to burst from my chest. My mind spun, memories flooding in chaotically. Images of my mother smiling in the kitchen, my father sternly teaching business lessons, Henry laughing in our childhood. Why me? What did I do wrong? Tears rolled down, mixing with the salty sweat. I was about to give up, my body exhausted and limp, the darkness pulling me into the abyss. Then suddenly a sound came from above, not the heavy shoveling of burying, but frantic scraping as if someone was trying to rescue me. My heart pounded, hope flickering. Someone's digging. I tried to scream through the duct tape, but only weak, muffled sounds came out. The digging grew closer, earth pattering onto the lid. Then, with a resounding crack, the lid suddenly burst open. Fresh air rushed in like a cool river, dispelling the suffocating darkness. I inhaled greedily, my lungs reviving. A rough, calloused hand grabbed my wrist, pulling me hard out of the ground. "Hang in there, young man." A hoarse voice rang out, but I only managed one deep breath before everything sank into darkness again. This time, from exhaustion, I passed out. When I woke, my body ached all over, but there was no more darkness. Gentle light from a kitchen fire shone in, warm and comforting. I was lying on a simple wooden bed covered snugly with blankets, the scent of pine wood and wood smoke faintly lingering. My head still hurt, but breathing was easier. I tried to sit up, my limbs still weak, and looked around. This was a small house in the forest with rough wooden walls, simple furnishings, a few chairs, a dining table, and an old bookshelf. Beside me, an old man was sitting by the still glowing hearth, stirring a pot of something fragrant. He was about 70 years old, with disheveled white hair, a long beard, deep-set eyes, but exuding kindness. He wore an old wool sweater and frayed jeans, looking like someone living in solitude with nature. Seeing me stir, he turned, offering a kind smile. "You're awake? Don't move too much, the head wound is still fresh." His voice was warm, like a grandfather telling stories. I blinked, trying to remember. Where am I? Who are you? My voice was hoarse, my throat parched. He poured a glass of water from an old jug and handed it to me. "Drink first. My name's Milo, a forest ranger and wild game hunter in this area. I live alone deep in the woods, about 2 miles from the nearest settlement. No neighbors, just birds and animals for company." I took a sip of the water, feeling the coolness spread, and began to ask, You saved me? How did you find me?" Milo sat down on the chair by the bed, his eyes gazing into the fire, his voice low as he recounted. "I was on my usual forest patrol. This area is off limits for exploitation, but I heard strange noises, truck engines shoveling and headlights flashing in the dark. I thought it was poachers or loggers, so I hid behind the trees to watch. I saw a few rough-looking strangers digging and burying something large, like a coffin. They worked hastily, then drove off, leaving a strong smell of machine oil. I waited until they were gone, then approached. The freshly covered earth was soft, and I heard faint sounds from below, like someone struggling. I grabbed my shovel and dug right away without thinking. When I opened the lid, there you were, bound tightly, face pale. I pulled you up, untied you, and brought you here. Lucky I was in time, you were nearly suffocated." His story sent chills down my spine. Those strange men, surely henchmen hired by Henry. I gripped the blanket tightly, my heart racing. "Thank you. If not for you, I would have..." My voice choked. Milo shook his head. "Don't think too much. I just did what was right. Rest now, we'll talk more tomorrow." He handed me a bowl of hot soup, made from forest vegetables and venison he hunted, and I devoured it hungrily, my body craving nourishment after hours of despair. In the following days, I stayed at Milo's to recover. That small house became a safe haven, far from the chaotic outside world. Milo cared for me attentively, like a father for his son. Early mornings, he rose to stoke the fire, cooking porridge from cornmeal and wild fruits. He bandaged my head wound with herbal leaves he gathered himself, telling stories of his life. A retired soldier who chose seclusion after losing his wife. "The forest is my home, kid. No rat race, just truth." His words made me think. During the day, I lay in bed, my body gradually strengthening, but my mind in turmoil. I pondered, tormented day and night. Who had tried to kill me, wanted me dead that badly? Henry's call, his hasty voice, the deserted site, all suspicious. Henry, my brother. Could he be involved? I wondered, my heart aching. We used to be close, sharing every secret. But lately he had changed, always siding with Dad, supporting the fraudulent deals. Maybe he feared I'd expose the truth, I thought, tears rolling down in the dead of night. Milo noticed my turmoil. Evenings by the fire, he sat listening to me talk about family, the company, the irregularities I discovered. You were buried alive because you knew too much? In this life, greed blinds people. He advised me, don't rush back. Think carefully. The ones who harmed you are still out there. I nodded, but the fire of hatred in my heart burned brighter. I walked around, breathing the fresh forest air, the birdsong, wind through leaves, to regain strength. After about a week, my health stabilized. The wounds healed gradually, my body no longer weak. I decided I had to leave. I couldn't stay here forever, though my gratitude to Milo was boundless. On a chilly morning, I hugged him goodbye. "Thank you, Milo. You've saved my life more than once." I pressed some remaining money from my wallet into his hand. Though he refused, I insisted, "Use it to fix the house or buy hunting tools." He patted my shoulder. "Be careful, young man. Don't let hatred consume you. Live to find the truth." I nodded, stepping out of the wooden house, blending into the deep forest. I would return to the city in secrecy, hiding the fact that I was alive and quietly investigate the masterminds behind it. "Henry, Dad, you will pay." The journey back to the city was not easy. I walked 2 miles through the dense forest, my feet stepping on the wet, decaying layer of leaves, cold winds slipping through my thin jacket. Each step was a reminder of the hell I had just escaped. The wooden box, the pattering sound of falling earth, and the fear that devoured me. My heart pounded, not from fatigue, but from the fear of being discovered. "If they know I'm still alive, they'll try to kill me again," I thought to myself, my hand gripping tightly the old backpack containing a few sets of clothes from Milo. Reaching the main road, I caught the first bus, sitting huddled in the back corner, eyes staring out the window while my heart was full of turmoil. The city gradually appeared, skyscrapers, bustling traffic, and the familiar smell of smoke and dust. But now everything felt alien, like a world I no longer belonged to. Initially, I planned to contact my mother, Mrs. Angela, the kind woman who had always been my support. I imagined her bursting into tears upon hearing my voice. "Son, you're alive." But then reason overcame emotion. If I revealed myself, Dad and Henry would know, and they had power and money to cover everything up. They had buried me alive once. They wouldn't hesitate to do it again. "I have to hide, gather evidence first," I told myself, my heart aching at the thought of my mother suffering from the news of her son's disappearance. I decided to live anonymously on the city's outskirts under the fake name, Jonathan Reed. I rented a cheap motel room in the suburbs, a place with few passers-by, moldy walls, and the smell of stale food. That was where I started over like a ghost among the living. To avoid recognition, I completely changed my appearance. I grew a scruffy beard covering the facial features once familiar in the business world. I cut my hair shorter, dyed it darker, and bought fake glasses to wear. Every morning, looking in the mirror, I saw a stranger, eyes still sharp but now full of gloom. "You're no longer Samuel Lancaster," I whispered to the reflection. "You're the hunter." That change wasn't just external, but internal too. I became more vigilant, less talkative, always observing everything around me like a survival habit. I began connecting the events, sitting for hours in the dim room with an old notebook. That call from Henry that day, his hasty voice, emergency at the northern site, was the source of it all. Why was the site deserted? Why no workers? And the blow from behind, the strange men Milo described, all pointed in one direction. This was a meticulously planned conspiracy. "Henry, my brother, he must be involved," I muttered, my hand trembling as I noted it down. I decided to investigate in that direction, starting with Henry, my brother, who was once my best friend but now might be my enemy. I secretly followed Henry for many days, like a lurking shadow. Early mornings, I left the motel wearing an old coat, a cap pulled low over my face, and walked too near the company headquarters. Henry kept his old habits, driving his shiny luxury car to the office, lunch at the usual spot, and returning home late. I observed from afar, sitting on a park bench opposite, pretending to read the newspaper. My heart raced every time I saw him, the familiar face but now full of mystery. "What are you hiding, Henry?" I thought, my hand clenching tightly. After a few days, I noticed a strange habit. Henry often met a strange man at the same small coffee shop in the old neighborhood not far from the company. The shop was called Corner Brew, with few customers, old wooden tables and chairs, and the faint smell of freshly ground coffee. They met in the late afternoon around 4 p.m., 2 or 3 times a week. I began noting details. The first time I sat far away, observing through the glass, The man was about 40 years old, scarred face, wearing an old leather jacket looking like a heavy laborer, perhaps mafia. They talked tensely, Henry frowning, tapping the table while the other smirked. Then they exchanged a thick envelope. Henry gave it, the man took it, and they left quickly. My heart pounded. What's this? Payment for burying me alive? I secretly took photos with my old phone, zooming in on their faces, though the quality wasn't great. One rainy evening, I decided to act. The coffee shop was busier than usual, light jazz music echoing softly. I sat near their table, separated only by a thin glass wall, pretending to work on an old laptop. My hand trembled as I activated the secret recording app on my phone, hidden in my pocket. Henry arrived first, looking tired, ordering black coffee. The strange man came after, sitting down with a forced smile. The conversation began, and I held my breath, listening through wireless earbuds. The man spoke first, his voice hoarse. "I've completed the task you assigned." Henry frowned, looking around. "Don't speak loudly." "Are you sure you buried him alive?" The man laughed. "All done, rest assured. He definitely won't survive." Then he demanded, "Where's the rest?" "I did it clean. Give me the balance now." My heart raced like it would burst. Their conversation confirmed everything. This was evidence. Then I saw Henry sigh, pulling a thick envelope from his coat pocket, sliding it across. "This is the final payment. Keep quiet, no more contact, and leave the state as soon as possible. If it leaks, we're both dead." The man took the envelope, stuffing it in his pocket. "Don't worry, I know how to keep my mouth shut." They stood up, leaving separately. I sat still, heart pounding, cold sweat running down my back. Those words cut into my heart like a knife. Henry was the one who hired the group to bury me alive. My own brother, flesh and blood, had planned to kill his sibling to cover up crimes. I turned off the recording, my hand shaking so much I nearly dropped the phone. Why, Henry? For money? For power? Tears rolled down, but not from sadness. From anger. I left the shop, blending into the night rain, my heart full of determination. Now I had evidence. But not enough. I needed to expose the whole thing. I returned to the cheap motel room on the city's outskirts, where the musty smell and the distant sound of traffic always reminded me of my isolation. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and I collapsed onto the old wooden chair, my mind spinning. The phone was still clutched tightly in my hand, that recording like a time bomb. I played it back, listening to every word again. Henry's voice rang out, cold and calculating, with no trace left of the little brother who once cried his eyes out after falling off his bike. My heart tightened, and suddenly childhood memories flooded back like a cold wind, whipping across my face without mercy. I sat silently for hours in that temporary rented house, the yellowish light casting shadows on the stained walls and everything around me blurred, giving way to the past. I remembered the powerful, cold, and ambitious father, George Lancaster, now 62 years old, chairman of Lancaster Construction Group. His company was a giant in infrastructure construction and mining, with massive projects spanning the entire state, from bridges and roads to ore mines. My father always believed that money and reputation were the only measures of a person's worth. He often said in his deep voice like a command, "Sam, in this life only the strong survive. Money is king, reputation is armor." From childhood I saw him as a stone statue, tall with prematurely silver hair from sleepless nights calculating contracts, his sharp eyes sweeping over everything to find profit. He built his empire from nothing, starting from a small company in the suburbs, and now, Lancaster Construction was a symbol of success. But behind that, there were nights he came home late, reeking faintly of alcohol, and secret calls with partners. My mother, Mrs. Angela, often whispered, "Your father is very busy, but he loves you in his own way." I used to believe that, used to admire him like a hero. But now, sitting here, I realized he was a monster concealed by a veneer of power. Then there was Henry, my brother, 3 years younger than me. He was a smart, sharp kid with burning ambition and always favored by Dad because he resembled him the most. While I lived by principles, honesty, and a bit of softness, Henry learned to compete, control, and trade off for praise. As we grew up and worked at Lancaster Construction, everything became clearer. I took the position of technical director, responsible for design and site supervision. At first, I was excited, thinking I could contribute to building great projects. But then I discovered the dark truth. The company routinely substituted substandard materials to cut costs, falsified records to pass inspections, and shortened construction timelines to profit from contracts. I remember the first time inspecting an overpass project, I found the concrete subpar, thin, prone to subsidence. "This is a safety risk," I reported to Dad. He smirked. "Sam, that's business. Save a little, profit double." I objected, demanding an internal audit to clarify. Dad got angry, his face flushing. "You're betraying the family. These things make the company strong, make us rich." Henry, then already the financial assistant, sneered, "Sam, don't stir trouble. This is normal business." I looked at him, my heart aching. "Normal? This is deception, Henry. People will suffer." "Normal?" he replied coldly. "This is how the world works." My objections increased. In every meeting, I presented evidence, falsified records, poor materials, and potential risks. Dad yelled, "What do you think you know? I built this company from nothing." Henry shook his head, seeing me as a troublemaker. "Focus on technical stuff. Leave finance to me." I felt isolated, like an outsider in my own family. The tension escalated when I discovered a major project, a new urban development with inflated budgets. Millions of dollars exaggerated, used to bribe officials and pocket personally. I printed the report, brought it to Dad's office. "Dad, this is serious wrongdoing. We have to stop." The argument was fierce, shouts echoing through the floor. Dad slammed the table. "You want to destroy everything I've built? This is how the world runs." Henry interjected, his voice calm but sharp. "Sam, take a break for a while to let things settle. Don't complicate everything." I looked at him, eyes red. "A break? This is crime, Henry." A few days later, the fateful call from Henry came. His voice hasty, and I rushed off without suspicion. Now sitting in this dim room, all the pieces strung together into a complete picture. The attack was not just to silence me, but to eliminate the only one in the family daring to speak the truth. Henry didn't just follow Dad. He was an accomplice, willing to sacrifice his brother to protect the empire. My tears fell, but now the family pain turned into determination. I clenched my fist, my eyes resolute, gazing out the window at the falling rain. "I won't just survive," I whispered, "but I'll force them to face their own crimes." After many weeks of surveillance and contemplation, I decided to meet my mother, Mrs. Angela Lancaster, 58 years old, the kind woman who had once been an elementary school teacher. She had been my source of life since childhood, with her warm smile and stories about kindness and truth. Since the day I went missing, I knew she lived quietly and alone in the large house by the lake, a place once filled with children's laughter, now only echoing with the wind howling through the windows. The press reported my disappearance, even declaring me dead, but she always believed her son was still alive somewhere in the world. I vaguely heard from old newspapers I read at coffee shops. Mrs. Lancaster refused to comment, but neighbors saw her lighting candles every night, praying for her son. My heart tightened at the thought of her. She didn't deserve this suffering. But if I revealed myself too soon, everything would fall apart. I needed her help to gather evidence, to definitively expose Dad and Henry. I prepared meticulously for the meeting. I bought a disposable phone and sent an anonymous message to her number. "I'm alive. Meet at the old park tomorrow afternoon. Tell no one." I knew she would understand. That park was where she used to take Henry and me for walks in our childhood, with the sparkling lake and ancient oak trees. That afternoon, rain fell lightly, the sky gray like my mood. I wore an old coat, A cat pulled low over my face, standing huddled under the tree canopy, my heart pounding. Will she come? Will she recognize me? I wondered, my hand gripping tightly the recording in my pocket. In the distance I saw her, slender figure, silver hair tied neatly, wearing a simple raincoat, walking slowly along the path. She looked around, her eyes full of hope mixed with worry. My heart ached. She had become much thinner, her face haggard from sleepless nights. I stepped out from the shadows, my voice trembling. "Mom." She turned sharply, stunned as if seeing a ghost. Her face paled, mouth agape, hand covering it. "Sam. Samuel. My son?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Then suddenly she burst into tears, rushing to embrace me in overwhelming emotion. I held her tightly, tears rolling down my cheeks. "It's me, Mom. I'm alive." Her familiar scent, gentle soap and lavender, brought memories flooding back, erasing the days of isolation. We stood there in the rain, crying like children, oblivious to anyone watching. "My son. I knew it. I always believed you were alive," she sobbed, her hand stroking my face. "But why have you changed like this? The beard, the hair, and you're so thin." I pulled her to sit on the rain-soaked stone bench, wiping her tears. "I had to hide, Mom. Dad and Henry, they tried to kill me." After calming down, sitting in a small tea shop near the park to avoid the rain, I recounted the entire truth. My voice trembled, but I held nothing back. The attack at the construction site, the blow from behind, the sealed wooden box, the pattering sound of falling earth, and the suffocating darkness that nearly devoured me. She listened, eyes wide in horror, her hand gripping the teacup until her knuckles turned white. When I told her about Mr. Milo saving me, she whispered, "Thank God, and that old man." Then I described the evidence I had found, the recording at the coffee shop, photos of Henry handing over the envelope, and the connections to the company's fraud. "Henry, my son, how could he?" She shook her head, tears falling again. She was shocked, pained as if cut by a knife, her face wrinkled in the agony of a family shattered. "Your father, he's ambitious, but Henry, he was once such an obedient boy." I held her hand. "I know, Mom, but they've gone too far. I need more evidence to expose them." Mrs. Angela was silent for a moment, then quickly regained her composure, the strength of a mother, of a teacher who once taught children to overcome difficulties. She wiped her tears, her voice resolute. "I'll help you, Samuel. I can't let them continue like this. They took my son from me once. I won't let them win." She promised to help gather what was needed to expose Dad and my brother. We planned carefully. She would wait for Dad to go on a business trip, then sneak into his office, where he kept secret files. "I know the safe's password," she whispered. "He thinks I don't care, but I've always observed." We hugged goodbye. I cautioned her to be careful, and she whispered, "You too. I love you." I left. My heart warmed after so many cold days, but also anxious. This was a dangerous turning point. A few days later, Mom sent a USB to me via an anonymous mailbox. I received it, my heart pounding as I opened it. Those documents, falsified reports, bribery emails, and Dad's handwritten notes perfectly matched what I had saved before disappearing. I pieced them together in the motel room, sitting for hours under the yellowish light, arranging them into a thick file. Now it's enough, I thought, my heart full of anticipation. But I knew submitting directly to the police might be covered up by Dad's connections. I needed to lure them into a trap, and Mom would be the final key. I began by using an anonymous account, a fake email through a VPN leaving no trace, sending a series of internal documents and an anonymous letter to major newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and a few reputable local ones. In the letter, I revealed two major secrets. First, the financial frauds within Lancaster Construction, citing inflated reports, bribery emails, and my father's handwritten notebooks, enough to cause a shockwave. Second, The rumor that the eldest son who went missing 3 months ago is still alive and is returning to expose the truth. The news spread across the media in just a few days, fast like wildfire. The next morning, I bought a newspaper at a street kiosk, sat at my usual coffee shop, and saw the bold headline, "Lancaster Chairman's Son Alive. Dark Secrets Behind the Construction Empire." The article quoted the documents I sent analyzing the financial fraud, millions of dollars inflated, substandard materials leading to deteriorating structures. Then the rumor about me. An anonymous source claims Samuel Lancaster, missing for 3 months, may be alive and preparing to accuse his own father's company of wrongdoing. The press exploded, reporters calling the company nonstop, residents affected by the project starting to speak out. On TV, news channels reported, "Missing heir returns to accuse. Lancaster Construction faces crisis." I sat there, my heart pounding, both anxious and satisfied. They're scared now, I thought, my hand gripping the newspaper tightly. Right after that, George and Henry plunged into a real crisis. I monitored from afar, using fake accounts to read news and eavesdrop. Henry was sleepless, I knew from following him, his face haggard, dark circles under his eyes, driving unsteadily to the office. He suspected everything, looking around as if afraid of ghosts, even changing his meeting schedules. My father tried to appear calm in front of the media. He held a press conference, his voice steady. "These are baseless rumors. Our company is transparent." But inside, a vague fear arose. I knew through Mom. She called me on a disposable phone, whispering, "Your father is irritable all day, yelling at employees. Henry is like a ghost, can't sleep." She said he often sat alone in his office, staring out the window, face pale. "He's scared, son. Afraid the truth will come out." My heart ached. After all, he was my father, but that pain was quickly replaced by determination. Then one day, things escalated as I predicted. Dad ordered Henry to return to the forest where they buried me. Mom told me through a secret call. She eavesdropped on their conversation in the kitchen, Dad's voice urgent. "Henry, we have to check. If Sam is really alive, make sure there are no traces." Henry hesitated, but Dad snarled, "Do it. Bring those guys along." My heart raced hearing the news from Mom. This was the opportunity. I prepared immediately. Bought a small camera, wore black clothes, and returned to that familiar forest where hell had once devoured me. That night, the sky was pitch black, wind howling through the trees, the damp earth smell bringing back memories, the shoveling sounds, the wooden box darkness. I hid behind the bushes about 50 meters from the burial spot, camera ready. Only an hour later, my father and brother, along with the group they hired before, 3 burly men with menacing faces, arrived at the spot where they had buried me alive 3 months ago. They drove a black truck, headlights off to avoid attention. My father commanded, his voice trembling. "Dig, hurry!" Henry stood beside, face pale, holding a flashlight shining down. The sound of shovels piercing the earth rang out, layers of dirt being thrown aside, heavy and tense. I recorded everything, my heart pounding behind the bushes, trying to hold my breath to avoid detection. When the box was pulled up, the wood partially rotted from forest rain, they opened the lid. Inside was completely empty, no body, no traces. Henry paled, trembling uncontrollably, staggering back, nearly falling. "No, impossible. We buried him." My father stepped back, eyes vacant, cold sweat running down his neck, voice faltering. "That bastard! Is he really alive?" The hired men whispered in panic. "Boss, what now?" They hastily refilled it, got in the truck and left, leaving the forest silent. I turned off the camera, my heart full of satisfaction mixed with pain. "You've dug your own graves," I thought, tears rolling down in the darkness. That night, I also received an audio file from Mom of Dad and my brother's argument after returning. She secretly placed a recorder in the kitchen, her voice trembling when sending it to me. "Listen, Sam. It breaks my heart." I played it, hearing Dad yelling at Henry, "What the hell did you do? How did Sam escape?" Henry sobbed. I don't know, Dad. We hired those guys to bury him alive. Dad sighed. He knows everything now. We have to cover it up, call the lawyers. She expressed her pain and shock in the accompanying message. I can't believe it. A biological father and brother so heartless as to bury their own flesh and blood alive. I'll help you to the end. My heart tightened. Mom was enduring so much suffering because of us. But now I had almost all the necessary evidence, from business wrongdoing, fraud, bribery, to the plan to eliminate me, the coffee shop recording, the digging video, and their argument. The file was now thicker, more solid. Just waiting for the right moment, I thought, my heart full of dramatic anticipation. After recording all the evidence, I spent time compiling the entire file and proof. But I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed an expert's support. Alone, I couldn't confront a giant corporation like Lancaster Construction. They had private lawyers, extensive connections, and money to turn the tables. So I sought out an old friend, David Cole, a renowned criminal lawyer in Jackson. We knew each other from college when we both studied basic law before I switched to engineering. David was now a prominent attorney specializing in major cases involving corporate fraud and criminal offenses. I called him from a disposable phone, whispering, "David, it's Sam. Samuel Lancaster. I'm alive." Silence on the other end, then his voice rang out, full of astonishment. "Sam? My God, you. Everyone thought you were dead. Let's meet. Tell me everything." We arranged to meet at a small bar on the outskirts of Jackson, a place with few visitors under a gray afternoon sky. When I met David, he hugged me tightly, eyes red. "You look so different, Sam. The beard, the hair, and your eyes like you've been through hell." I smiled sadly. I have been through hell. We sat in a secluded corner. I recounted everything, from the blow at the construction site, the wooden box, Mr. Milo saving my life, to the evidence I had gathered. David listened, face serious, taking notes furiously. When I handed him the thick file, he flipped through it, eyes lighting up. "This is gold, Sam. Financial fraud, conspiracy to murder, enough to put them in prison. But," he paused, looking at me seriously, "you need more time to prepare. Your opponent is a massive corporation with deep influence. Your dad has friends in the courts, officials, and money to buy fake evidence. If you act hastily, they could turn it around, dismiss the evidence, frame you, or even threaten witnesses." My heart sank, but I knew he was right. While I was still pondering the next step, sitting in the motel thinking every night, new news exploded like a bomb. I turned on the old TV and saw the report. Lancaster Construction faces class action lawsuit from residents around project area for substandard construction causing subsidence and water leaks, severely damaging many households. My heart pounded. This was the project I had opposed, where poor materials led to consequences. Hundreds of households in the new urban area, ordinary families, children playing on cracked ground, had united to sue. The press covered it extensively. Residents accused Lancaster Construction of fraud, cutting corners on materials for profit. I sat there, hand gripping the remote tightly, emotions surging. This is the opportunity, I thought, hands trembling with excitement. Those residents, normal families, kids playing on cracked earth, were suffering due to my father's greed. I decided to temporarily postpone suing Dad and my brother to monitor this lawsuit's developments. If Dad and my brother win, justice dies. I have to intervene, I whispered, eyes staring out the dark window. After a few weeks of litigation, the victory seemed to lean toward Lancaster Construction. My father used money to buy fake evidence, bribe witnesses, and leverage connections to influence the judge. The press reported, "The lawsuit may end with symbolic compensation. Lancaster prevails." I sat watching the news, heart aching like it was cut. Those residents' tired faces, shattered hopes. Can't let this happen, I thought, anger surging. I resolved to appear on the final day of the trial to demand justice, not just for myself but for the affected community. This was the moment. to appear in the middle of the civil trial, submit evidence, and shift to criminal. They'll be shocked. I smiled in the darkness, but my heart full of tension. Dad Henry, you'll face me. The final day of the trial arrived, the air chilly with gray clouds hanging low as if heralding an impending storm. I drove my old car to the courthouse in the city center, my heart pounding like a drum. Outside, a crowd had gathered, reporters with cameras at the ready, affected residents holding signs reading "Justice for Us," and police maintaining order. I blended into the crowd wearing a cap pulled low over my face, observing through the glass doors. The courtroom was packed, media and press in full force, flashes firing incessantly, whispers buzzing like a disturbed hive. This was the final session between Lancaster Construction and the community residents, a class action lawsuit over substandard construction, subsidence, water leaks causing severe damage. Hundreds of households had lost homes, property, even health due to the company's greed. Inside the courtroom, victory seemed to lean heavily toward Lancaster Construction. George and Henry Lancaster sat on the defendant's bench, faces smug, confident they were about to overcome this lawsuit like all the previous ones. My father, in an expensive suit, silver hair meticulously combed, sat upright, smiling faintly at Henry beside him. Henry was more relaxed, fingers tapping the armrest, eyes gleaming with impending triumph. They whispered something, perhaps plans to celebrate after the trial, a fancy dinner or a trip to forget the trouble. I watched from afar through the door crack, my heart aching. You think it's that easy? After burying your own son alive? Anger surged, but I held it back, waiting for the perfect moment. The judge banged the gavel, voice echoing. After considering the arguments, the court is prepared to deliver the civil verdict. The atmosphere was tense, affected residents bowing their heads in disappointment, reporters scribbling furiously. That was when I acted. Hand gripping the file tightly, I pushed the courtroom door open unexpectedly. The hinges creaked loudly in the silence, and all eyes turned to the man entering, me, Samuel Lancaster, the son declared missing 3 months ago. Time seemed to freeze. I stepped in, each footfall steady on the polished wooden floor, light from the large windows streaming behind me, casting a tall shadow. No one recognized me at first, but then a whisper arose. That's Samuel? And like a wave, the silence shattered. The entire courtroom fell dead silent, only murmurs spreading. Reporters hurriedly pulled out cameras, flashes exploding like fireworks, illuminating my face, scruffy beard, short hair, but eyes still sharp, full of determination. The affected residents whispered, "He's alive?" The judge paused mid-sentence, gavel hanging in the air, mouth agape. "This is..." Lawyers from both sides turned sharply, faces shocked. But I focused only on those two faces, Dad and Henry. George turned ashen, face white as paper, eyes wide and unblinking, hand gripping the armrest as if about to fall. He stared at me like seeing a demon rising from hell, mouth muttering, "No, impossible." Henry was more panicked, trembling all over, eyes filled with horror as if seeing a ghost returning from the dead. He shook his head repeatedly, hand covering his mouth, voice muffled. "Brother." "Sam?" They knew. Their perfect plan had crumbled, and now I stood there, alive and breathing, ready to expose everything. I walked straight to the bench, ignoring everyone else, heart pounding but voice steady. Everyone held their breath, the atmosphere suffocating like a string about to snap. I placed before the judge the original thick file with the company logo, heavy and substantial, along with all the videos, photos, and audio files I had collected. The rustling of papers sounded like a challenge. "Your Honor," I said, voice clear in the deadly silence, "I am Samuel Lancaster. I am not dead, and I have evidence to prove that Lancaster Construction not only committed fraud in this project, but also conspired to kill me to cover up their crimes." My words exploded like a bomb, the courtroom erupting in murmurs. I presented briefly, voice trembling with emotion but resolute, recounting the attack at the construction site, the blow from behind, the sealed wooden box and being buried alive, The prolonged fraud within the company, substituting poor materials, inflating budgets, bribing officials. I played the digging video on the auxiliary screen, everyone horrified seeing Dad and Henry panicking beside the empty box. "This is my father and my brother," I said, heart aching. "They tried to eliminate me because I dared to speak the truth." The prosecution immediately requested a halt to the trial, voice urgent. "Your Honor, this is serious evidence. We request redirecting the investigation to criminal charges, including conspiracy to murder, evidence concealment, and organized financial fraud." The judge nodded, banging the gavel. "Trial suspended. Investigation begins immediately." The courtroom descended into chaos, affected residents applauding, cheering. "Justice at last." Reporters rushed out, phones ringing. The press exploded with immediate news. Son returns mid-trial. Lancaster family faces murder charges. Headlines spread across social media, TV, and newspapers. My image entering the courtroom becoming iconic. People buzzing about the man back from the dead. George slumped in his seat, shoulders trembling, face suddenly haggard and aged, as if drained of life. He tried to look at me, mouth moving as if to say something, perhaps Sam, or why. But no words came, only labored breathing. Henry trembled uncontrollably, hand covering his face, tears rolling down, panicked to the point his lawyer had to support him. He tried to stand, to rush toward me, but his legs gave way, only able to sit there staring at me with eyes full of horror and belated regret. They once powerful, now like two ghosts, facing the consequences of their greed. I looked at them for a moment, heart aching like it was cut. After all, they were family, but then turned away without a word. I stepped out of the courtroom, light streaming through the large windows, warm and brilliant after so many days in darkness. For the first time after 3 months of hell, I felt the true breath of freedom and justice. Fresh air, birdsong outside, and a lightness like shedding a heavy burden. Reporters surrounded me, flashes firing, but I only smiled faintly. Justice will come for everyone. Mom waited in the hallway, rushing to embrace me, crying, "My son, I'm so proud of you." I held her, tears rolling down, but tears of happiness. The story wasn't over. Consequences and sentences lay ahead. But in that moment, I knew I had won. In the days following that trial session, everything unfolded like an unstoppable whirlwind. Federal investigators launched a comprehensive probe, swift and relentless. From the file I submitted, the thick stack of papers with the company logo now turned into a weapon. A series of wrongdoings and crimes were exposed. The FBI raided the company headquarters, sealed my father's office, and interrogated employees. The bribery emails, falsified reports, and handwritten notebooks, all analyzed meticulously. The press covered it extensively. FBI raids Lancaster construction, millions in fraud exposed. The affected residents cheered, but I sat silently, my heart full of anticipation mixed with worry. Could they escape? The investigation lasted several months, but each day was a blow. I was called as a secret witness, sitting in a secure room with FBI agents recounting every detail. The blow at the construction site, the wooden box darkness, the pattering sound of falling earth. Each word cut into my heart like a knife, but I remained resolute. They are my father and brother, but crimes must be punished. The final outcome came after a lengthy criminal trial, where all evidence was laid bare before the jury. I sat in the witness stand looking at Dad and Henry, now in prison uniforms, faces gaunt, hands cuffed, and my heart tightened. My father, George Lancaster, 62 years old, was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for masterminding the murder conspiracy, large-scale financial fraud, and bribing officials. The judge read the verdict, voice stern. You abused power to conceal crimes, even sacrificing your own flesh and blood. Dad bowed his head, saying nothing, only tears rolling down his wrinkled cheeks. Henry Lancaster, 34 years old, was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison for directly participating in the murder conspiracy, concealing evidence, and obstructing justice. He sobbed uncontrollably upon hearing the verdict. I'm sorry, Sam. But it was too late. The courtroom applauded, residents cheered, but I sat silently, my heart empty. Justice has come, but at what cost? I thought, tears rolling down. The press reported extensively. Lancaster dynasty collapses. Life sentence for the tycoon. Lancaster Construction Group had all assets seized, declared bankrupt, projects halted, and hundreds of workers lost their jobs. I watched the news, seeing the headquarters sealed, machinery idle, workers standing outside the gate with dazed expressions. We didn't know anything, one worker told reporters, voice sad. My heart ached. They were innocent victims of my father's greed. The projects, bridges, roads, urban areas were re-inspected, many demolished for being unsafe. The press called it the fall of a family empire, a prime example of the consequences of blind greed and power. Long articles, from construction tycoon to lifelong prisoner, George Lancaster loses everything, covering crimes. I read with a heavy heart, remembering the company's early days. Dad working tirelessly, our pride. Now everything in ruins, only ashes left. A few months later, when things settled, I submitted a request to visit the prison. I needed one final meeting, not for revenge, but to find the answer to the question I carried through 3 months underground. Why? Why did they do this to me? My heart raced driving to the federal prison, cold Wyoming wind blowing through the window, carrying the scent of pine forests. The prison with high walls, barbed wire glinting in the sun, the air chilly like my heart. I was led into the cold visitation room. Old wooden table, glass partition, and the strong smell of disinfectant. Dad and Henry were brought in wearing gray prison uniforms. George looked aged, disheveled silver hair, tired eyes, back more hunched. Henry gaunt, haggard face, avoiding his brother's gaze. They sat down, separated by the glass, and silence lingered. I looked at them for a long time. No longer anger, only a sad emptiness. Dad, Henry, I whispered, voice breaking. George bowed his head slightly, voice hoarse. Sam, son, I was wrong. I lost everything, fearing loss of power, even father-son bond. I thought money would protect, but I was wrong. He cried, tears rolling down wrinkled cheeks. Henry choked, eyes red. Sam, I just followed Dad's orders, scared and selfish. I thought you'd never go against family. I'm sorry. Their words cut like knives, but I said little. I just looked at them, remembering childhood. Dad teaching biking, Henry laughing. Then quietly stood and left, leaving behind the sound of the iron door closing. The sound ending an entire era of crime. Outside, cold wind whipped my face. I cried, but my heart lightened. They realized, I thought, though too late. Afterward, Mom and I moved to a small town in northern Wyoming, renting a wooden house by the forest, where birdsong and morning sunlight replaced the dark days. The house, simple, warm wooden walls, glowing wood stove, and a small backyard garden. Mrs. Angela tended the little garden, planting roses and vegetables, her hands soiled but smile radiant. I've never been this happy, son. As for me, Samuel, I wrote the entire story, not for revenge, but to remind people of the value of conscience and truth. I sat at the wooden table typing for hours, from the construction site below to the fateful trial. The book was later published, becoming a bestseller, but for me it was healing. I often sent thank you letters to old man Milo, who saved my life in the forest with small amounts to repair his old house and buy new hunting tools. He replied, "You living well is the greatest reward." Though memories sometimes returned in nightmares, the wooden box darkness, falling earth, I learned to forgive and let go. I understood that justice isn't just the sentence, but the truth exposed and conscience awakened. In the late afternoons, I often sat with Mom on the porch, watching the sunset over the pine ridge. Orange gold light spread, gentle wind carrying the fresh forest scent, dispelling all weariness. She smiled, saying, "You're still alive, and that's the greatest miracle." I nodded faintly, smiling lightly. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't revenge, kunos, but keeping your heart intact after everything.